Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome.
Welcome.
It's a Monday. What's that song? I don't like Mondays, and yet I love Monday. I get excited.
I know. Well, we always love when a new potty comes out, and now we're into
Yeah.
our well
Unless
over
I've got a
100
hangover.
podcasts. So everybody, thank you for tuning in, and
that's
thank you for
exciting.
listening. You know, it's just so exciting how we're growing that way.
Yeah,
you know.
I'm growing.
And
I'm
also,
drinking too much
let
wine.
us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like, and also
Yeah, we love the feedback.
We love feedback
it's
about all
really
different
important.
things. You know, so DM us and do that. And we always sort of like love an event and love a little breakfast. And you know, like remember the International Women's Day
I
brunch
remember
that we went
we're
to.
at Mossman Rose Club. We were emceeing, and it was a beautiful group of women in the club that morning. I'm not a morning person, but I woke up for that. And we met some spectacular women who were on a panel, and one of them we're going to be interviewing today,
Exactly.
Dr. Phoebe Meagher, and she really impressed us. She's a scientist with Taronga Zoo, which we'll explain in the intro. But we both turned around in the car afterwards. I went, it's a really unique tact, isn't it, for a woman, you know, what she's achieved, and she's all about the illegal trade of wildlife and what have you. It's right up our alley. And we thought, got to get her on.
I know, and science and females, those sort of areas there where you don't sort of get so many
Depleted.
people into it as well. And you know, she's young, she's glamorous, she's gorgeous,
And a mum.
You know, a lot of, you know, I used to sort of think, you know, like a scientist had to have the white coat and sort of like be an old grey-haired man or something
Yeah.
like that. But
Yes.
we've brought the glamour into the studio. So who have we got?
And you know what also about Phoebe, which I think it's good to bring this to the fore, is, you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of mothers working. And I think last week or the week before, her son had an accident, and she was ringing from the hospital. And I'm like, what do you do? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
It happens to the best of us, you know. And you rock. You just stand up to be counted. I can't today. I'm with the kids.
Yeah, because Phoebe was going to come on
That's the
our
way it
potty
flows.
earlier.
That's the way it flows, you know. So
We're thrilled with
without
you're
further
here.
ado, let's bring Dr. Phoebe Meagher into your lives. She has a diverse background in wildlife conservation, forensic research and education. She's a scientist at Taronga Zoo Conservation Society. She's not only a mum, a dedicated mum of two. She's dedicated 12 years to Taronga Zoo, pioneering the use of advanced technology to combat wildlife trafficking and enhance animal detection. Her efforts in leading field projects have had a tangible impact, allowing for the successful release of rehabilitated animals back, I love this, into the natural habitat.
So important.
It's, you know, for such a young woman, it is a remarkable career. Welcome, Phoebe.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, welcome to the
And thank
Baby
you for calling me
Feds.
young as well.
Every week I go back a year, don't I?
She
Nicola?
does. Well, this
Nicola
one
goes, how old are you this week? I say, it's irrelevant.
But it's funny.
It's irrelevant.
The funny thing too is the older you get, the younger other people sort of think. You know, like, you know, when I was flying with the airlines too, and I'd think, that pilot looks too young to be able to fly. Or, you know, like that. And then I was going, oh, hang on, I've been
But
flying
you
for
never
30
used
years.
to think that before. That's what's so funny.
It's quite funny.
I
isn't
love
that
it.
I took my son to. I was, there's no way you're old enough to be a doctor.
Yeah, isn't it
So
incredible?
Isn't
It
it
is.
incredible? But
Is
look-
it because we're getting older and we're looking at, like when we were young, they were just like us?
Yeah,
Like,
I
what's,
think so.
oh, God, that's terrifying.
We've
What a
got
thought.
We've got a son, so welcome. But tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, you know, how did it all sort of start with your incredible career?
Yeah, I've always loved wildlife, always loved being in nature, particularly the ocean. I was really lucky. My family's from South Australia, so we had a shack down on the York Peninsula in South Australia where we just would go wild and we'd swim with stingrays and dolphins. Even the sharks would come in, but we weren't too worried. But yeah,
There's big sharks down there.
There's really big sharks down there, but they wouldn't come in too close.
Right.
But we sort of learned that...
Let me check your legs. Hang on.
They're
She's
all
got
there.
two.
They're all there.
And she's got two arms, right?
And now I
Yeah.
manage the shark attack file
Oh,
as well.
funny that.
Anyway, side note. But I did always want to work with wildlife. I think I knew that. I didn't know if science was the path for me, actually. And I think back to your intro comment about the scientist being the man in the, you know, in the white coat and the grey hair. That's all we saw growing up. So I never thought that science was a path for me. I thought scientists were old men in labs. And so I sort of thought about, ecotourism and those types of careers. And it wasn't until I got to high school and really fell in love with biology that I started to think, oh, wow, I can work with animals and I can learn to understand animals and be a biologist. And yeah, my path went from the aquarium, hand feeding sharks in the aquarium, and then I just...
Here in Sydney, the
Yeah,
aquarium.
so the old Ocean World in
I was
Manly.
thinking that, but I used to
Yes.
take the kids there. Fabulous,
It was
yeah.
a great experience.
Did you get into the tank with them?
Yeah, I used to hand feed the sharks.
Oh,
yeah,
as you
on
do.
scuba.
Hand
Yeah.
feed the shark.
Hold on, I haven't checked her hands yet. Yeah, she does.
There were some pretty scary moments.
I
There was
bet.
this, we had a feed bucket and we'd put the fish in there and with a lid on and bring that down with us. And you could sort of tell the behaviours of the sharks if they were happy or not happy that day. And the non-happy shark, they make themselves really big and they put their fins down like this.
I remember that next time I'm swimming.
Yeah, good. And get out of the water.
Wow. Well, Mick Fanning punched one in the
Yeah.
in the eyes, didn't
That
he?
was
Remarkable.
amazing.
Yeah.
But this shark called Huey was coming towards me and he started doing this and I went, oh my goodness, he's going to...
Ah.
And they do this jaw extension where their jaw comes out of their mouth. Anyway, he came in and I picked up the bucket and can you imagine trying to move a bucket at speed through the water? You can't. It's like a
Oh,
bad
no.
dream, you know, slowly. And he crunched the bucket. It was about this far from my leg. So that bucket stood up above the sink in the back room for a long time as a bit of a warning. But yeah, so there were some scary moments.
That is
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And you stuck with it. I would have run a mile and said, no, different career, please.
You know what, I went on to do
Did you
an
go
honours
home and have a
thesis
good
in sharks.
G&T?
Really? Isn't that incredible? She went on to do a thesis in sharks as a consequence of almost being eaten. What's that about? Like, see, look, she
Face
goes,
your,
"Oh, go
is
on
it
with
face
you."
your fear
Something
or
about
Yeah,
that
exactly.
fascination, I think, is like that fear fascination line
Yes.
that people have. And yeah, I went on to study that exact species of shark, so the grey
What was the
shark.
so it was a grey, and they're usually quite gentle, aren't they?
Very gentle.
Yeah.
But they didn't know that. So for a long time, they hunted them because they look quite scary because they've got the ragged
jaw
teeth.
thing comes out?
Yeah, so there was thousands killed in the 70s because they thought they were the man-eaters. They quickly realised that they're not, and so now we're trying to save
Thank
them.
goodness for people like you, because
Yeah, I
like
agree.
no, really, because
many
it's sort of like
ways.
and I would say most people would go, you hear the shark alarm, obviously at the beach, and you're scared, and sharks are sort of like like that, but they're a beautiful part of our whole ecosystem, and
So
aren't they?
important.
And important, yeah,
It's
vital.
like an apex predator. If they get lost, then the things they eat explode, and then the whole system collapses. And and I think it's a good example, particularly for the grey nose shark, of how science is used to make those decisions, because they actually found that sharks with smoothed edge teeth only eat smaller fish because they have to swallow it whole, whereas sharks with serrated edge teeth can tear it apart. So they're the baddies.
Which are the ones that
Great
had,
white.
had the had the sort
Terrifying.
of like attacking people and stuff like that?
That's
so
great.
Great whites,
They're not so
tiger
great in
sharks.
my eyes.
And in Sydney, we also have bull sharks.
Oh, yeah,
and
they're
they're
aggressive.
also a bit aggressive.
Because there's been quite a few shark attacks,
There has.
really, hasn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a...
But she still loves
the
them,
average
Nicola.
is about 15 a year, but if you compare that to things like deaths by coconuts...
Oh, no, I get that.
Deaths by selfies.
Coconuts?
12 times more likely to die taking a selfie globally than you are by shark attack.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great
But
stat.
the coconut got me.
You tell us
Yeah,
that stat.
so apparently you're more likely, there's more fatalities from coconuts globally than there are
Sam's
by shark
agreeing.
Hey,
I had no
Bulla.
idea.
Out of a tree on your head.
I had
It's
no
so
idea.
true.
Nowadays.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Of course you lived in Phuket.
Yeah.
That's
All on your
fascinating.
head.
Oh my God! Next time I have a pina colada, I'll have more respect.
Yeah.
Now, my question to you is particularly after I'm sure many a fearful moment working with sharks. Did you never not contemplating working on humans, becoming an actual doctor with humans?
They're
Like,
the scariest of all the species.
oh,
No, thank you.
That's so funny.
so never
No.
wanted to flip.
No, I was really interested in the bigger, like how the ecosystem fit together. So not so much an individual animal, but why that animal did what it did and its importance in that ecosystem, and why is it moving like that, and why is the population doing that? That sort of bigger picture aspect, I think, of population biology on threatened species particularly.
And Phoebe, it's good because you're saying back to that point, Di, too. It's like,
yeah.
do what you love what you do. And you're sort of saying at the start, too, that you loved animals.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
love that. So it's sort of like that's sort of your area, and you've gone and you've found that, and then you've gone into science and become a biologist.
Yeah.
So it's great for young. What do you say for women now to go into science?
I think there's a huge opportunity out there for women in science. I think there's lots of avenues as well. It's not just that school, then uni, you know, and then straight into academia. There are so many pathways, you know, government organisations like Taronga Zoo, but federal government organisations, there's private industry, you can be a lab tech, you can be a field officer. There are so many different avenues to get into wildlife conservation or science for women. It's not just always one, like all careers, right? There's not just one linear path, it's a zigzag, and everything you do along the way, you pick up a skill here and there, even if it's waitressing or stewardessing or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then you end up in this one spot and you're like, oh, that really makes sense now how I got here because I've learned something all along the way.
It's what's fascinating is when I first met you at the International Women's Day, it's you stay with me what you did for a career, because it's not like you can go to a cage or go and catch a kangaroo or whatever. I mean, in the ocean, it's so vast, and it's to actually do research. I mean, I guess the question I'm trying to get to is one, is how challenging it is versus the results from your research. Yeah. Sort of, can you swim around that for me?
Yeah, nice one. I can dive into that.
Oh, 10 points for that one. I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's super challenging. I mean, studying animal movement, even on land, is challenging.
Yes.
And then trying to do it under the water is even more challenging.
Absolutely.
So we do use different techniques to do that. Tagging, acoustic tags, satellite tags is one of our key tools to learn about movement of animals, because we can't stand on a boat and see where a shark is or see where a turtle is, or even the other species I study, the platypus. So we have to typically catch them first, tag them with some type of tracker, and then we can monitor the tracker through satellite systems or acoustic array systems, and that tells us where that animal's moving. So we have developed sort of tricks of the trade to try and watch these animals without actually watching them, but it is hard to get to that point, and the effort that you mentioned before. So we might go on a diving trip to tag a turtle, and we might be there for a week, and we might catch one turtle. And that is, boats, dive staff, risk assessments, accommodation, it is a big, effort, and you might get one turtle. You might get 5. So.
What about the prawn trawler that you went on? I think that was a very funny story. Can you share that with us?
God,
For example, what you do to get to one, there's a ray you were after?
Yeah, so for my PhD I studied shovel-nosed rays.
Yes.
Wow. That's so unusual, isn't it?
So niche.
I know, I love it.
They're really,
as you do.
looking animal, with a triangle head and a shark tail. But they're caught quite heavily as bycatch in fishing trawlers. So when they're catching prawns, like in prawn trawlers, they'll accidentally get them in their nets, and I'll take advantage of that and use that to do my research on. But so just to access one stingray, you would have to find a fisherman and avoid the fisherman with the cheeky wink in their eye and say, yeah, sure, love, you can stay on my trawler for a couple of nights, no worries. You go with the nice trawlers and you head out to sea, but you're out there for 3 nights in a row, and they don't really sleep. They work through the night.
What about the aroma?
Oh, yeah, that's really pleasant. No, but I've worked in aquariums my whole life, so that's just part and
it's
parcel of being a marine
go,
biologist, right?
Right.
But we would have to sort through the prawns. So you'd be, well, you're on board, don't take up space, sort through the prawns, and so you'd be there sorting through the prawns night after night, and sometimes there'd be, I don't know if you've heard of a numb ray, but a numb ray is a ray species that electrocutes you, and that's their way of defence. And if they get in the pile of prawns, which they often did, they would electrify the entire bunch of prawns because it's all wet.
So they're nasty
and so you
beasts.
touch it and and you're just
great
getting
fun.
zapped. I'm like, what am I doing? What life choices?
Seriously. I'm thinking that now, looking at you.
Why did you choose a stingray? Because I don't have many fears, but I have always had a fear of stingrays.
I
do. And I've told this story too when I went up to Hayman Island as a young girl, and I was with my brother and my mum, and just going through sort of like the low sort of thing of the water, and then I sort of stood down, and there was just like stingrays everywhere, and I screamed and screamed and screamed, so much my brother had to get me on his back because I had a meltdown, and we survived and still got back. And I guess here's the late Steve Irwin, a hero, and you just hear such terrible things and they're scary. I mean,
so I understand it can be frightening for some people, and some people really don't like wildlife. Interestingly, my own daughter, who has been raised by a zoologist, is a bit more inclined like that. So a stingray might come up to her in the water and she's out of there.
Oh, that's interesting.
Whereas my son's a bit the opposite.
How do your kids deal with mum's career?
I think they quite like it. I think there's lots of positives. They see a mother that's passionate, that go after her goals, that does a job she loves. The flip side is the field work, right? So a huge part of a wildlife biologist is time in the field. And as I mentioned before, and we talked about before, you're not just going in for one night or a day. You're going away for a week if you want to put in that effort to get the platypus or get the turtles or study them. So that's the juggle. Is I think in their eyes, they think, well, are you choosing to be away with the turtles instead of home with us? And so I think that's with any travelling job for working parents. But that's the bit that I find hardest is that balance, that constant
but
juggle.
interesting sort of back with that.
That's true.
Because you're sort of thinking of the turtles. I think most people go, we love turtles, but we don't say like stingrays. But there must be, for you to study that for your PhD too, what are the positive things with stingrays? Because I want to learn more.
Oh, you're so cute, Nicola. Give me a positive about a stingray.
So not all stingrays have a sting. So
there you go.
their
There's a
name-
positive.
There you go.
Yeah.
Not like a scorpion. They have stings.
Yeah, and for a stingray with a sting to sting you, you would have to step on it. Or jump on it or do something to make it feel threatened. If you're in the water walking along, they're just going to swim away.
Yeah.
Right.
In your case, so we got taught from a young age in this place in York Peninsula where I grew up amongst the stingrays.
With the small sharks.
You just have to shuffle. So if you think there might be
tip.
stingrays
Like that.
in the area, you shuffle
In the
your
sand.
feet through the sand and then they just
Because I
swim
still
off.
don't like them because I've tried the thing there, but I think that's
She's
just the
so
shuffle.
funny.
Yeah.
She needs to
Okay.
get some help around
I do a bit
this.
of. Well, I've got my
We need to
therapy
put you
now.
on the
They
couch.
can't hurt,
Got
the
that.
majority of stingrays will not hurt
I've got
you.
my scientist here. Okay.
Yeah, and they're very important. So they just go around. They just eat the animals that live in the sand. If they're quick enough to get a fish, they will. But they're very important for regulating that inshore ecosystem. Interestingly, when you said that there was like lots of them. You might have walked upon a breeding ground, which for me is fascinating because we discovered
love
those
it.
breeding
Yes, it was.
grounds
They were everywhere.
during my PhD, and we found that when the women were the female stingrays were pregnant, they would come really close inshore, and then they would have their babies inshore because it was nice and warm for them.
Yeah, it would have been warm water at Hayman Island. Wow.
I want to hear about, because you don't just specifically work with marine animals. I want to talk about the animals that are traded illegally and how you're involved in that. Because Nicola and I
know. In our
we
backyard,
get,
we're all about over the
we
back
heard you
fence.
speak about it, and we thought we've got to bring this to the fore to the listeners.
So I think a lot of people don't know that how big the illegal wildlife trade is. So globally, it's estimated to be in the trillions of dollars.
What?
Yeah. In Australia, at least multi-millions, if not more, in terms of the criminal trade of wildlife. This can be from anything globally, like from the most trafficked animal in the world, which is the pangolin, which also some people haven't heard of, but it's a scaled mammal. And they use the scales in different parts of the world as medicine. However, it is just keratin, so it's just the same as your fingernails and hair. So people are paying thousands of dollars to just eat mammal fingernails. All the way through to reptiles in our own backyard. So
Such as?
blue-tongue lizards.
You're kidding
I
me?
love
Yeah.
blue tongue
And my
lizards,
fave.
don't
I
we?
know, and a lot of us have grown up with them in our backyards, keeping our cockroach population under control in the back. And they're just wonderful. They're not impacting anyone. They're not hurting anyone. They're just regulating the native ecosystems out in Sydney. But because they're so gentle and so well-tempered and don't make a noise and don't bite or scratch or are poisonous, that makes them a target for the illegal wildlife trade. So in some places, shingleback lizards, which is a very close cousin of the blue-tongue lizard, and blue-tongue lizards are really coveted for the pet trade, the exotic pet trade. So thousands are smuggled out in boxes.
Can you give us the day in the life of one being traded? How would it go? Someone grabs it? What happens?
Yeah, so they'll
Like,
be,
how do they get it?
Yep.
Oh,
So there's
yes.
usually somebody much higher up in the criminal network that's organising everyone. And then at the bottom end of that pyramid is the poachers. So they will go out into the deserts, the backyards, the bush, wherever it is that they can get these reptiles. They will take one from the wild. They'll take them back to meet a transport person. The transport person often will take that lizard to a facility, like a house, someone's house, a criminal's house. And usually there's multiple other animals there. So they're multiple poachers, but also backyard breeders, so animals that are being bred in backyards and not just poached from the wild. And they're all sort of put together in Tupperware containers. They're held in plastic storage boxes. They're barely fed, and if they are, it's cat food, and they're often dehydrated. And they're not looking at them as animals; they're looking at them as money makers. So.
What mode of transport do they get? OS?
Yeah, so postal service is huge.
You're joking.
Yeah. So a lot of the boxes are just taken to the local post office.
Almost makes me sick.
It's sad, isn't it?
And then they just get put through the post. And luckily, though, we are working with some really great tech.
Yeah, so AI, because with this event was actually like with the internet, it was women's tech.
Huge.
And so tell us how that's happening.
And just quickly, how much do they sell for when they get there?
Yeah, so
ballpark,
it can range. Ballpark, so $2,500 is the minimum. That's a pretty crappy single animal. But if you get a nice pair, $30K, $30,000 for a pair of lizards. Yeah, I know. It's
what?
Just, yeah.
God, you're constantly shocking me.
Yeah,
are you joking?
So how are we changing this around? What are we doing now?
Yes, and coming back to AI, I think that's a great throw in,
Obviously, they're going through the postal pathway, as we know. And so what we're trying to do is use imaging tech and AI to identify them being smuggled out in parcels. So you probably imagine or that we've got ammunition, AI detectors, we've got bomb detectors. So when all the parcels are going through, they already have the AI image algorithms that will be like, alert, alert, this is a bomb or something bad, but they don't have one for wildlife, or they haven't yet until now. So we have worked with a company called RappiScan, and we've developed an image algorithm.
When you say we,
Taronga.
Yes.
Well, some of this money funding goes towards things like this.
Oh, and we can't do it without this funding actually.
Wow, so that's just good for everyone to know.
So so it's how close is it to coming to the fore?
So it's ready to go. It's ready to be rolled out. It's got an 82% accuracy, so it can detect 82% of parcels with lizards smuggled inside, but also we've got
and other wildlife,
exactly, birds as well. So
women love tech. That event, with Robin Foister, who's been on as well too. This is so positive, then, isn't it?
Oh, it's making such a difference. And, we're partnering with other tech, and now we can work out even where those animals have come from. So we
tell me about, speaking of, now you're on that, Dr. Kate Brandis.
Brandis,
she freaks me out. I've read a lot about her because I'm a birdie.
Woman.
I even this morning I was collecting bloody bird feathers. But tell me about the Feather Map of Australia. She blows my mind.
So that was the whole project that started us on some of this pathway of illegal wildlife trade tech. Is I listened to Kate Brandis talk at a conference about the Feather Map. And the Feather Map is this...
Do you know about this? It's pretty... this is mind-blowing.
Cool project. So it's run through ANSTO, but also University of New South Wales. They will take molted feathers. So when you're walking in the park and you pick up a feather, you can then scan that feather with this X-ray device. It measures every element in that feather, and that can then tell you where that feather was grown. For example...
Where the bird...
Yeah, so if a bird was living in New South Wales while it was growing its feathers, there will be a specific New South Wales elemental signature.
Can you believe
this?
If that
then bird flies all the way over to Western Australia and molts that feather, and you walk along and pick up that feather, we can see that bird has come all the way from New South Wales.
Oh, it's remarkable.
It's such a great piece of tech. And it was listening to her talk about the Feather Map that I went, well, can we do this for the illegal wildlife
That's
trade?
what my point is.
Yeah.
And do you use that tech?
Yeah, exactly. So then I walked straight up to Kate talking about women banding together and making a difference. And I actually just said, do you think this would work for the illegal wildlife trade? And would you be interested in collaborating? She was right on board. Interestingly, on the women encouraging women thing is I actually went to a few people and said, what do you think about this idea? I think it's great, but we just need some startup funding. The only person that said yes was the only woman I asked. So I went through and they're like, no, we don't think. Oh, no, I don't know. And then this one lovely woman,
Only
Rebecca
takes
Spindler,
one.
she's wonderful.
Only
lovely
And you know what?
mentor.
That's a great life tip because we always say people
Who is
get,
it? Do
you
we
get-
give a shout out
You
to
get
her?
a,
Yeah, Rebecca Spindler.
Whoever that
amazing
is, we
woman,
love her.
incredible
Spindler.
mentor.
But we all
Yeah.
get knockbacks in life,
It's true,
and
Nicola.
sometimes again. But sometimes it just takes, as you said, it only just
Right
takes
person.
the one.
No, Nicola, you're
and,
so right.
And that one, how that can make all the difference.
And she said, go for it. She had a
We've got a lot to
Lincoln
thank you
with a
for
grant.
because you sort of question and you've agreed you're right behind this. So also just for how do we also with the money for Taronga Zoo, because I love going to the zoo, and does it help when you sort of how is
Look
it
at
you
her
can buy-
face.
I know, just tell us.
Our entire team is only able to do the work we do because of that money.
Donations.
Yeah, exactly. So
Be friends of the zoo. There's a whole lot of things. And
Oh,
people
this
from
one's-
overseas, you've
is-
got to
yeah.
come to the Taronga
Now,
Zoo.
what Nicola just said is there's friends of the, but you're with the Taronga Zoo Conservation. So, what sort of area should we, for the listeners right now, what area, particularly where you're focused, should we be donating?
So I'm going to be biased though, right?
Yeah, of course.
But we feel the conservation area is, it's the iceberg under the tip that you see at Taronga. So I always think about Taronga as the exhibits and your day-to-day when you come in is the tip of that iceberg. And underneath is all this conservation work that we do that leads to the messaging during the keeper talks and tells us about the species that you get to meet when you come to Taronga and saves those species in the wild. So I think the conservation work is the absolute foundation and the core of what Taronga does now. We're way more than just that public-facing zoo now. We are a conservation organisation and I think a real modern zoo in that regard.
And I have to say, it has to be one of the best, most beautiful zoos in the world. And they say that animals have the best view.
It's
of
true.
Sydney.
And so
they
do the
really do. And then
visitors.
there's
You're
weddings,
right.
which about sort of like
functions.
close by. But what about the people
Yeah.
who go see zoos are still really cruel to animals, like keeping them in confined spaces.
And I think
as
in
well
particular,
too.
now on that note, Nicola, the thing that upsets me most and does sometimes bring me to tears is one of the biggest mammals, the killer whale, and who's highly intelligent, squashed into a tiny little pool with major depression, like you see them, or anxiety,
What
whatever
do
you
you
call
say
it.
to people like that with
Yeah,
zoos?
Exactly.
There are terrible zoos out there, and
It's usually third
unfortunately,
world.
a couple of bad zoos give zoos a really bad reputation. But also historically, right? So zoos have evolved. Good zoos have evolved a lot, and some people still think of, the 1950s zoos when they think of a zoo, which was a collection of captured animals. There's no skirting around it. They would go out and put an animal in cage, and it wasn't even by country, right? Do you remember back in the day when we were kids, it was tiger, lion, cheetah. It was the big cats, but it made no ecological or habitat sense at all. So now we try and do, big multi-species free roaming areas that aren't even cages anymore. So for example, at Taronga Western Plains Zoo, where we have a lot of our African species, we just have a moat. So we have the land and it's like an island, and then we will have the moat that separates us from the lions, which is good because, lions can be dangerous. But yeah, we're very much away from the animals in cages. And we even have the new immersive classrooms at Taronga Zoo in Sydney, where instead of the children coming and looking and having that cage in between, is they will sit in the room with the animals, and the vines come out amongst the children and the echidnas walk around and sniff the toes of the children. And it's really about giving that, it's not behind a cage anymore. We're in the same
Interactive.
It's so
space
positive
together.
to everyone sort of to hear those things. And they do some great things, the Taronga Zoo, the roar and snore.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's one of the leaders, I think, in as far as looking after and nurturing animals.
So
in
choice
the world.
is the word that we really focus on for animal welfare now in zoos. Every animal needs to have a choice. It won't be that we bring this animal and you must do this. In those immersive classrooms, the children sit. If the animal chooses to come,
I love
excellent. If the seal chooses to come out, great. If they don't, we don't force them. It's a
Ripped
choice.
off with the ticket, though. I'm only joking. Sorry about that. But I have to bring you back to those aquariums. Often in third world countries, I might mention, with the killer whale going in a circle all day.
Yeah.
and what is it, the fin that bends over because they're
bends
so
over, they
anxious?
think it's depressed,
Like,
yeah.
what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely animals that do better in a zoo setting than others. You know, at Taronga, I don't know
But
if
that's
you've
an
heard
aquarium.
on the news as well. You know, we're moving our elephants out to Taronga Western Plains Zoo from Taronga Zoo Sydney to give them more space. And so I think we have to look at animals individually and species individually.
Yeah.
Some thrive, you know, in a
Yes.
zoo setting. And unfortunately, the big thing is we haven't left enough wild spaces for these animals.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, zoos and artificial refuge is all they have left. And that's the same for things like bilbies, western quolls. It's getting that way for platypus, koalas. A lot of the time, fire, drought, flood, pollution, habitat destruction means that we actually need to provide this habitat for the animals because
Absolutely.
they have nothing left.
Well, you
interesting-
guys are always
yeah.
there to save an
But
animal.
it's
You
interesting
always hear
bringing
about
it back
you.
to what we're talking
Yeah.
about with that movie at the start as well.
Yes.
You know, like that with Future Council, and we're sort of talking about that one
Yeah.
as well with children, with the saving the planet and stuff too. So it's so important, I guess, our whole environment as well too, because if we're doing stuff to
Absolutely.
you know, like to upset the whole environment, there it's the whole it affects with the animals.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to look at it from all perspectives and habitat protection. And I think there is a real role, though, for that ambassador species in zoos still, though. So having that connection, and I'm not sure if it was Jane Goodall or David Attenborough, but somebody
love
did
them.
say that people won't save what they don't love. And so we need to build that connection
It's
with
got to
people
be sexy. I get that.
to love an animal or love an environment,
Yeah.
and then they will want to protect
I'm gonna
it.
love
Definitely.
a stingray,
Definitely.
Didie.
Oh, God. I'm not game. Look, she's a Melbourne girl trying to get her to go for a bloody swim.
Exactly, Lane Beach to go.
I
got
swim most
trouble
days.
from
I'm like,
her.
come on, Nick. Oh, my hair's been blow dried. Bloody hell. Put your pearls on.
Do you have a favourite animal?
Oh, that
Good-
question.
That's a
often
great
do-
question.
Yeah.
If you had $1 for that.
I love that question.
It changes every year. Do you know what? Every time I learn about an animal, I fall in love with it. So when I was doing the PhD on stingrays, favourite animal. When I was studying sharks, favourite animal. Now I'm learning so much about the platypus. I think maybe the platypus is my current favourite for 2025.
We say that about
yeah.
guests. Every guest
We
we
do,
go,
don't we?
they're our
My
favourite one.
favourite.
We go, that was,
Yeah.
and then all
We
of a sudden,
actually do.
exactly. We do.
We do
every
say,
single
oh,
one. And
they're
right
our
now, you're our
favourites.
fave. You know?
I can't let you go without sharing with the listeners about your jungle story. I want to know if you met Tarzan. When you went to find a pangolin, is
Yeah,
it?
pangolin.
Pangolin? And you went to Palawan.
Yes, that was
Tell
an
us, can you tell us that
incredible
story?
trip.
Oh, no.
Because I heard you, that was some podcast ages ago, and I went, oh my God, she's got to share that story. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of components of that story, but
Yeah, but go for it.
yeah, so Palawan is a very small island in the Philippines. Philippines part of sort of that sort of Southeast Asia hub. It's a hub for illegal wildlife trade.
Oh, right.
Pangolin, as
I
I
didn't know
said,
that.
most trafficked animal in the world.
Oh, it's
and Palawan
awful.
has the only existing population of the Philippine pangolin left in their jungles there.
How sad is that?
So
Yeah.
they rang us up when they heard about our tech that we could identify origin in the illegal wildlife trade and said, we would love to see if you could test this on pangolin. And I was like, I'm there. Palawan, I think, is listed as the most beautiful island in the world.
It's a long way from a prawn trawler,
It
absolutely.
is a long way from a prawn
I'm hearing
trawler.
you, yeah.
So I jumped at that opportunity and went
Bye,
over,
kids.
yeah, it was. Went over to Palawan, worked with this amazing organisation over there called the Katala Foundation, and Katala means red-vented cockatoo in the local language. And they're a conservation organisation that look after a bunch of different species, but the pangolin as well. And I had no idea what to expect, right? You know, I've got at the time, two toddlers at home, and like, okay, here we go, off to Palawan. I wonder what it's going to be like.
Love
Sort of
adventurous
imagining
women.
beaches
Yeah.
and things, but it was wild. So they first introduced me to the ex-poacher that was going to be my guide.
What?
Yeah, so he had a dog
Meet
who
the enemy.
has been trained to sniff out pangolin for the illegal wildlife trade. But Katala are doing such an amazing job is they're giving these poachers an alternative income.
Brilliant.
So they're finding them and saying, you've got some skills finding pangolin, but we don't want you to do what you're doing. We will pay you as much, if not more, plus give you a place to live and all these other things.
And feed their children,
Yeah.
essentially.
Isn't that smart?
If you help us
Very
find pangolin for research purposes and science purposes. And
Love it.
it is such a key because a lot of the on-the-ground poachers, so not the criminal kingpins, but the underground poachers, they're just trying to feed their family, you know, and they're not the ones that I think should be being locked up because, you know, they're just trying to do
You're
what
at the
they
forefront, you'd
It
know.
should be those big
Yeah,
criminals.
who are the bad ones?
The bad ones. The people that are demanding it, I think, are the bad ones. But anyway,
True.
so we get to Palawan and after they've introduced me to the poacher,
You're like, hello.
I was like, okay, fine. And then 1, 2, 3, 8 military guards with automatic rifles say, hi, yeah, we're going to also be taking you into the jungle because I hope my WHS is listening. Work health and safety, shut your ears,
I
Valerie.
love it. Do that.
So there was a prison. I mean, there's so many layers to this story, but
It's the best.
But there was a prison on Palawan that backs onto the jungle. And this anecdotal story, they tell me like, well, you know, it's a bit of a loose fence. and the criminals sort of just go into the jungle, but they don't really mind. And there's probably about 10 that live in there that haven't been seen in years. But some even have families in the jungle and have set up.
I just want a pangolin.
This beautiful young scientist.
So I think they were a bit worried, and so they got the 8 military guards with the semi-automatic rifles, and I've got the poacher and the poacher's dog.
She's got more than Donald Trump.
Where are my
family.
children?
I know. And then the final piece of the puzzle was the machete guy. So tiny little guy, probably 18. Biggest machete you've ever seen, and it was for making a path in the jungle. Like that's how thick and wild and uninhabited it was. There wasn't even a path. So he's at the front cutting the vines.
The kids only knew what Mum was doing.
4 military guards, the poacher dog, then me, then 4 military guards behind me, and we just walked through the jungles for 2 weeks.
God.
And every time we'd set up camp at night, it would be me in the middle. And then the military guards around like a clock face, you know, like 1, 3, 6, and 9. And I'd be in the middle, and then every night, and there was all these stories about, like militia and, you know, guerrilla welfare and all these other things in the jungles.
Did you ring the kids and say, spaghetti bolognese here?
No, I did not
Mummy's
tell them
fine.
anything about this.
Mummy's fine in the jungle.
But then after about a week, finally, the dog sat at the bottom of a tree, and this the machete guy climbed up, and there was a mother pangolin with a baby pangolin on its back. And so we were able to use that to get our wild elemental signatures to develop this tool. So it was like an incredible, like my experience.
I'm so proud of you.
The memory of it. There's like there's a viper, like a snake right there, just like this is. You know, and then I did end up getting some weird jungle fever, so it makes all the memories a bit more sort of hallucinogenic.
You know, we're all about inspirational women and men, you know,
people,
and you certainly are the rock star of that.
Yeah,
you
I
know.
agree with you.
And you're doing so much to
Go
help
the
our
pangolin.
planet.
Pangolin, I can't even say the
those
word.
teams that are doing that day in, day out. So after 2 weeks, I was wrecked, ready for my hotel bed and my shower. But really, it's those on-the-ground teams that are doing it day in, day out that should really be getting the kudos.
No,
'cause
but
they're
it's
doing it
a
all
taste
the
of
time.
what,
And it's
what
fascinating.
a researcher
it's
does.
all about sharing
you
stories
know,
and learning
against
new
all
things.
odds.
And if you don't share these stories, they are incredible.
Correct.
And you know,
Correct.
Yeah, and you have
Yes,
to, what you have
essential.
to do to get this research.
Yeah,
So-
and say yes. I think that's the thing is, to any other women or anyone that wants to go out there is just say yes to those things. So I think it can be scary, but you will never regret it, right? You'll always regret the no's. But
Depends
you'll
if he
never regret the
slipped with the
yeses.
machete. You know, could have been another outcome.
But I love, you know what? No, I love
Seriously.
your take on that, and I think it's really good, that message, just
Very
to give
much
people
so.
listening, because it's so easy, the instant no, because you're in your safe space.
Be
And-
habitual.
Yeah, you know, and you just
Jump
go,
out of
But
it.
isn't it funny
Take
in
a leap
life
of faith.
when you do get out of that comfort zone and you know you face your challenge, and it's normally always difficult the first couple of times you do something, or you get no failures. But when you actually break through or say yes, it's so rewarding. And you're certainly a great example of that, Phoebe. So, you know.
Nicola, I think, was mentioning about the climate change. What do you think of coral bleaching? Is it man-made, or would you say, your opinion, and or is it a natural progression?
So like corals have evolved to bleach when they get stressed. So that's a natural thing that happens to them. But the rate at which our oceans are warming, and therefore the rate at which our coral is being bleached, is faster and worse than we've ever seen at any time in history. And, you know, it's that warming temperature and the warming water, it's shown now that that's because of CO2 gases that we're producing into the environment at this horrible rate. So we are making it worse. We're taking it to the point where it's not going to come back. I mean, once a coral is bleached, doesn't regenerate. That's it. That coral is dead.
So like with the issues with the Great Barrier Reef in Queensland,
Yeah.
and there's so many places around the world that are just no longer going to exist.
I know, and there's
It's all part of the
theories about that. I mean, coral
ecosystem.
takes thousands of years, right, to grow. But some people say, oh, we're going to have a coral reef in Sydney Harbour then in about 200 years because as the water temperature increases, everything in Queensland will die and bleach.
Not the people, I hope.
And then corals will start
Mind you,
to
they could all do
form.
with a bit of bleaching, some of that grey hair up there with the long socks and sandals. But no, so that's really interesting. So climate, we are essentially responsible.
Oh,
in your
the
opinion,
rate
for
of
the
the warming at the
bleaching.
moment, 100%.
So you do not think? Do you think there's a way around that? I hear different snippets of information, obviously via crazy news articles. But they're planting this and they're putting seeding that to try and regenerate coral spawning.
Yeah, so there is lots of work being done across the globe. At Taronga, we run a coral polyp freezing program called the Frozen Zoo, where they're taking critically endangered coral polyps that are being lost at a faster rate than ever before and freezing them at -80, even colder. So as an insurance population, so that if we do ever get to the point where there's no a live coral left, we have the ability to go out and reseed the coral and create these
How
new
cool is
reefs.
that? There's
I
science
love
again,
hearing
isn't
that.
it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so
100%.
there is lots of work going in to restoration of
And then
corals,
just tell
yeah.
us
That's
a bit
reassuring.
a generalisation question, but what can we do sort of to help kind of our planet, animals, what sort of a Phoebe tip?
Yeah, I think everyone needs to be more sustainable with their choices. I think there's that statistic that we're using resources at 1.5 times the ability for our Earth to create those resources. So we're trying to use up an Earth and a half instead of like half an Earth.
So what are the simple
basically.
things we could do, simple changes?
Simple waste, or use your recycling bins like you should. Electric vehicles if you can, hybrid vehicles if you can.
That's my next car for
Any
sure.
type of way of reducing that fossil fuel emission. Don't travel as much if possible, or look for a more sustainable way to travel. I love now when you try and book a flight ticket, it says, have you considered a train? It's much more sustainable.
Is that true?
Yeah, and it
I
tells
didn't
you
know
how
that.
long it would take you to get there via train. And
Wow.
You can pay a bit more for an airline ticket. When you buy an airline ticket too, we noticed too, you can pay by choice. And I think it is to cover, is it carbon thing or something like
Yes,
that?
that's true.
It
Yeah,
is, and
carbon
so
points,
we can
yeah.
do that. And Taronga is about to go into that space. So
I love trains.
I think the world
been on
now
a train
sort
for
of hit us
ages.
on a head that
'Cause
we
we don't
all
have
do
train
need to make
stations.
a difference.
Yeah,
So
we do.
Everyone has to step up to the mark. I mean, you guys are like working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, overtime to try and resolve, my God, traded animals and preserving animals in this world. But human beings, at the end of the day, you look at, all over the world and where animals are feeding and the lack of, everyone's affected. It's not just us, it's everybody.
And I think people don't realise how interconnected we are. I mean, bees is that prime example that people use. But if all the bees became extinct, it would not take very long at all, maybe 2 generations before we were in real trouble, because a lot of the plants require bees for pollination. If we don't have the bees, we don't have the plants. If we don't have the plants, we don't have the food, but we also don't have the oxygen, right? And so people out there spraying insects and spraying bees, and I think in America somewhere, I can't remember the exact place, but they did that air drop and they killed off all the bees, and the consequences were huge. And so people just need to consider more. I think, Indigenous communities and First Nations people really understand
A lot to learn.
of that connection, and I think Western culture less so. We sort of just more think about ourselves and not so much how interconnected we all are on the planet.
You know, it's such a great point because, you know, we're saying with the Feng Shui, whatever, it's all energy and we're all connected, you know, so, and we're all sharing planet Earth together.
There's not another
You
one.
know,
No.
this is what we're all sharing, you know, animals. So
Chemicals
we're all,
in
you know,
food is just
so it's incredible, and it's a real reminder, and it's a wake up. But you know, you're absolutely so interesting. You know, your stories and everything. They're fascinating, and you're making such a difference. So. Hallelujah to you, you know, like really
I
gratitude
think at the end
for the
of
work
the
that
day,
you're doing.
you're so right, Nicola.
You know,
it's just the
isn't it?
look, you know, you've just heard a snippet of an experience that Phoebe's, you know, in her little life, she's so young, what she's experienced.
How
you
old
know,
is she? 21 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Just
only
stick
42,
with
aren't
that.
I? How old am I? I'm only 43. But the thing is, though, Phoebe,
42.
honestly, quite honestly, we heard you speak. We honour what you do. You've expressed some of the results of research. I'm obsessed by the I call her the feather woman because I love feathers.
Birds of a feather. There, you sing a little
yeah,
song.
Yeah, I
I
love that song.
I know, I love it. Miley Cyrus.
But no, Birds
Isn't
of
it?
Feather is
Birds of
Billie Eilish.
Billie
Eilish.
Eilish. That's it. Billie, go. Yeah, we know.
Sam.
Come on.
But yeah, I just want to say, obviously on behalf of animals, but ultimately what we're doing for them, you know, with what you're doing with AI, like it's all going to wash over to us too. So, you know, as a human being to someone that works with animals that we all love and adore, this one's obsessed by her dog. I just want to say thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
And look, for anyone listening, if it sparked any interest, you know, what Taronga Zoo do with the conservation side is absolutely remarkable, and internationally, not just here in Australia.
So we're going to put all our links and everything on the show notes how to help. And if you're from overseas, you've got to come. It's the best zoo in the world.
It's
really,
the best
isn't it?
view in the world from a zoo. Like, if you got the view outside your office.
I do.
Oh God, I'm so
She
jealous.
has to have some other perks as
Seriously,
well.
it's
you
true.
know, like-
She deserves it. After that experience in the jungle, she deserves it. So we're going to ask you some of our groovy questions.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
Did you? I didn't think I sent them to you, so we're throwing them at
I'll be
you.
like,
Surprise.
yes,
She's
some
coming in.
mystery
Surprise,
questions
I
there.
love
If
it.
you could share a
No
back fence
machetes.
over the back fence with anybody on planet Earth,
Oh gosh, yes.
who would it be and why? Could be past or present.
I would love to share a back fence with David Attenborough.
Oh,
I should go, duh. No, me too.
I just think he's just so many things. You know, he's so articulate. I've never met him, David Attenborough, if you're listening. But he's just so knowledgeable. His way of communicating science and making everyone just fall in love with the natural world is such a skill. Yeah, I just think he'd be a really great, interesting guy. I'd love him to be my grandfather, right?
Can you
Have a
imagine?
tea with him over the back fence, hear his
he's
stories.
And I'm
Beautiful.
sure he'd love you as a neighbour as well, wouldn't he?
Oh
you
God,
know, like,
yeah. Can you imagine those
yes.
two having a chat?
Be
I don't
wonderful.
know about
Never
the
go to
machete
bed.
though. I can't get the machete out of my head. You're remarkable. The other question is, I'm dying to hear your answer to this one. If you had the opportunity of having a chat with your 21-year-old self, it had to be 21, not
You're only
20.
21 now.
I know. I was thinking that. Would you have any advice for her?
It's going to sound so cheesy. I was trying not to make it sound cheesy, but really keep following your passion. Don't be put off or intimidated. Every time, I remember at that age, I was just sort of doing honours at uni, and every time I walked into the lab, you would just feel so intimidated as a young woman walking in there, and you'd second guess, am I doing the right thing? Maybe I'm not smart enough. But yeah, so my advice would be keep turning up, don't make yourself smaller, keep following your passion, and you'll end up in a job that you love. And I did want to, about you saying thank you, and I really feel honoured to do what I do. I feel like it's a privilege for me, and I
think you're getting a bit teary.
Yeah, no, exactly. Keep
We love a
talking.
tear.
to be able to do what I do is
Yeah.
I just feel so happy, and I feel happy that Teoronga allows me to do the work that I love as well. So and the donors and the people that walk through the door all allow me to do my work. So yeah, reciprocal,
Oh, well,
You're
Phoebe,
beautiful.
you know
I
what?
love you, Phoebe.
You know what? And you've
You're
just
beautiful.
because she's so smart too. She's even answered the
Bloody
next
hell,
question. I was
she
going to
is.
say, what makes you happy? But you
Yeah.
answered it. Is there
I'd
anything
have
else
to
you'd like
say
to
my
add?
children. I'd have
Oh,
to
good.
say my children. They make
How
me
old are they
so-
now?
14 and 13.
Oh,
yeah.
their names.
So Max is my son and Asher is my daughter, and they do my absolute happy place. It's so weird though, as mums you would know, when they're young you sort of, I want my own space, I need a break, and as they turn into teenagers
Yeah.
it flips. And
It's
I
true.
want you in my space. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. So really, I'm at that transition point with them where I just can't get enough of them. I
Oh,
just
that's
think they're
beautiful.
wonderful. So
Oh,
they are
come
my
to a
happy
And you've
point.
place.
studied
Listen to
species,
me.
you know they'll bounce back and then they'll never leave.
No, the thing is that, we've gone through the empty nesty where they go off and do their thing. That's another, as Nicola's saying, with someone we interviewed, which we love.
They come back.
It's life's chapters, It's a book. You're just turning another
Well, this
chapter.
has just been
Yeah.
fantastic
Yeah.
having you on. Thank you so much.
And thank you for what you do for wildlife, honestly. I really mean that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So everyone-
Because it's people like you at the end of the day. Like, I'm going to have dreams tonight about the bloody post office with the poor blue-tongued lizard in an envelope or a box. Seriously, it won't be a nightmare. It'll be a dream. What else can I do? Donate.
Yeah.
There you
Yes,
go.
yeah. And
Need I
it's
say
te-
any more?
and for tech,
Yeah.
how sort of like that's really encouraging. So thank you everyone for listening. We'll be back in your ears next week. We love rating and review, and Di's got her own rating system.
Oh,
so what have we got for
God.
Dr.
Oh
Phoebe
my
Meagher?
God, this is going to be so difficult because there's so much to Phoebe. Okay, I think that it has to be 1 million out of 5 because I think they
There you
need
go.
millions.
Gee.
Seriously,
They
we've got to
millions.
donate. But I mean, honestly, what Taronga Zoo is remarkable. So, 1 million
go.
out of 5.
A
That's a
million out of-
biggie. Yeah, there you go, Phoebe.
Thank you.
That's how much
well,
you've
well
impressed me.
deserved. I'm going to double that million as
Oh,
well.
there you
Hey,
go.
Let's go the billion, the trillion to everybody.
Oh my God!
Thank you for
Well, let's
listening.
help
We'll
the
be
coral
back in your
bleacher
ears
with that bit
next
of
week.
extra money. Yeah, Phoebe, thanks for coming, and
Yeah.
look
Thank
forward
you.
to being in your ears next Monday.
Yeah. But touch out.
That was fun.
Stay there. I'm going to
It's
get
exactly
a
what I
piece.
wanted from you. I didn't
You are
want to hear
it's
about
all
your
the-
education. I didn't want to hear.
Oh,
I
really?
wanted to be bouncy because you know why? Sometimes